Hey, what is going on, Guardians? Nem with Planet Destiny here. And today we're going to be taking a look at the This Week at Bungie for February 28th. Now, unfortunately, TBL wasn't to cover it this week, so he's asked me to cover it for him instead. Now, we're solely going to be taking a look at the blog post stuff. TBL did a breakdown and analyze video of the Bungie ViDoc that was released this morning. So if you haven't seen that yet, we're going to have a link down below to that video. Now, starting off, we have a more in-depth look at what we're going to get between March 5th and May 6th with Season of the Drifter. Starting off, we have Gambit Prime and the first tier of Reckoning, along with private matches, Gambit private matches. The first map that we get is New Arcadia for the Gambit Prime mode. Think of this kind of like the original Trials of Osiris, where it was always the same map for that weekend. It's going to be a similar thing for Gambit Prime. So the first one is going to be New Arcadia. Then on Friday, we get the Reckoning Tier 2. On March 12th, we get the Deep 6 Titan Gambit Prime map. On March 12th, we get the Thorn Quest along with the Allegiance Quest, which I'm really intrigued at how they're going to treat that. So the Allegiance Quest is luckily not tied to your account, but it's tied per character. That way, if you kind of want to experience both endings of that quest, you're going to be able to do so. We've never really seen a fully fleshed out quest based on allegiances before, so I'm really hoping that's something that Bungie will fully flesh out and develop on in the future of whatever future iteration of Destiny we'll get, but it sounds really interesting. Now, following that, on March 15th, we have Invitations of the Nine, formerly known as Xur Bounties, and Reckoning Tier 3. On March 19th, we have the Gambit Prime on Legion's Folly, and on the 26th, we have Emerald Coast. Now, on April 2nd, all of the maps will be available in Gambit Prime, will also be available to be selected in private matches. On April 9th, we get Arc Week, and April 16th through May 6th, we'll get the Revelry, which both of those last two are events free to all players. Now, along with that, with Season of the Drifter and Gambit Prime, we do have a new armor set coming, and each armor set is based on a different role. So there's different roles there's a role for a Reaper, Invader, Collector, and Sentry. Now, we do have a message from one of the tech art leads that says, "For colorblind modes in Destiny, rather than applying a filter over the whole screen, we change only the content that uses color as its primary messaging to the player and greatly impacts their moment-to-moment decisions in the gameplay loop. Each case is handled individually and authored by hand to ensure we're making the best decision possible. Most forms of colorblind only have two dominant colors. For situations like this, we have to get creative with the color saturation and value to ensure that each role is identifiable as possible." Now, as I'm going to go ahead and put the chart here in the screen for you guys, so you guys can take a look at the different types of color schemes that they have for the different types of color blind that, people may have. But I think it's fantastic that, from the get-go, they have that situation already addressed, because in something like this where identifying the role based on the color that your armor is showing matters, this is a really good move, and I applaud Bungie for that. Now, of course, as we started Season of the Forge, we got 3 Pinnacle weapons. Then we're getting to 3 new Pinnacle weapons for Season of the Drifter. Now, for Season of the Drifter, we have in the Vanguard, we have the Oxygen SR3, a precision solar scout rifle. Now, this kind of reminds me of the Hung Jury, just kind of based on the model alone, but as far as the unique perk, it's called Mega Neura. Dragonfly deals more damage based on the number of precision hits made beforehand. Now, they do go on to describe that scout rifles have had a long history with Dragonfly and its predecessor over the history of Destiny. This weapon seeks to double down on that history and improve upon it in a simple and effective way. Now, it does sound like it's going to be pretty useful, at least a little bit more than the loaded question was, because the loaded question just revolved around having to reload all the time so you can get the most out of the weapon. For Crucible, this is the interesting one. Now, I'm sure there's so many people in the PvP community that scoffed and maybe rolled their eyes, because you guys are getting a lightweight submachine gun. Its elemental is Void, and it's called the Recluse. Now the unique perk is called Master of Arms. Kills with any weapon improve this weapon's damage for a short time. So it's essentially a universal rampage. So you get a kill with your primary, and you will trigger the damage boost on the Recluse. Now the message they had for the submachine gun was an interesting one that I'm not sure I entirely feel connected to, but this is what they had to say. Submachine guns are in a contentious spot in the game after the Forsaken release, with shotguns occupying a similar engagement range while also offering that one-shot kill potential that is so highly valued, alongside always being in competition with sidearms and even the last word as the close quarters primary weapon of choice. Submachine guns have fallen slightly to the wayside, so we created the Master of Arms perk so it could find its place in any given loadout. We look forward to seeing people experiment with it. Now, again, it's interesting that they're going with a submachine gun. I know a lot of people have been clamoring for a sniper rifle to be the Crucible PvP weapon, but this is what we got. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out in the meta and to see the weapon quest that's tied to it. For Gambit, now this one sounds a lot of fun. For Gambit, we have the 21% Delirium, the first rapid fire machine gun that we have. The unique perk is called Killing Tally. Kills increase this weapon's damage until it is stowed or reloaded. Now the message that they had for this one is this will be your first rapid fire machine gun for Destiny 2. How many of you out there guessed the archetype but not the sub-archetype? Well, with the reintroduction of bullet hose style machine guns, we figured a perk that played with their large magazine sizes and dealing with waves of enemies would be appropriate. Now, unlike the other two weapons, this one also has one of the new weapon perks we're introducing in Season of the Drifter, Overflow, to kick the magazine size out even further for true spray and pray action. Now, I can imagine this is going to be extremely handy with Luna faction boots, with Titans using their rally barricade, so I'm actually really excited to use this. Normally my machine gun of choice is the Hammerhead. I haven't really touched the Avalanche even after the fix for it, but this sounds like it's going to be a blast to play with. Now, as far as legendary stuff goes, they had a message about exotic power weapons in Destiny. You know, they've been pretty much the go-to weapon of choices. You know, we have Acreus, Wardcliff, Whisper, Sleeper. The heavy slot has been heavily dominated by exotics, and they're looking to counter that in Season of the Drifter, or at least balance that out a little bit more, including some buffs and some nerfs in a sense, just to kind of balance out the playing field. This is what they have to say. Exotics will always have their unique properties, but a well-rolled legendary power weapon should be able to compete in raw damage with an exotic power weapon. Although the legendary weapon may need conditional setups and mods to outright match, nonetheless the gap should not be so wide that you, the player, feel it necessary to run an exotic in any specific slot. Now, as for grenade launchers, they're getting a PvE damage increase by 25%. Reserve ammo is increased on most grenade launchers. In most cases, grenade launchers gained 3 rounds in reserves, but this amount may vary based on the perks you have, for example, field prep. And magazine perks and mods no longer affect ammo reserves. Grenade launchers had a bit of a reserve issue due to the magazine having an impact on reserves, and as a result, the reserve total wildly changed, typically not in favor of the player. This was addressed, and they got a PvE damage bonus on top of it to make them more competitive in that slot. And finally, rocket launchers. And yes, we're looking at the cluster bomb rocket launchers. PvE damage increased by 60 to 65%. Exotic rocket launchers have had their damage tuned separately. And cluster bomb, damage reduced by 80%. Now this lost damage was moved to the rocket launcher's main projectile as noted above in the damage increase. This is what they had to say about rocket launchers. Rocket launchers were entirely too dependent on cluster bombs to be effective. Like the full auto perks on shotguns, cluster bombs would nearly double the damage output of any given rocket under optimal conditions. They're talking about the Well of Radiance, melting point strategy. I see what you're doing there, Bungie. Now, the result was that on any target that you couldn't get all the cluster bombs to impact and detonate, rocket launchers fell by the wayside pretty harshly. By moving most of the damage of cluster bombs into the rocket itself, rocket launchers will now be more reliable and more effective all around, especially against aerial targets that cluster bombs would almost never damage. That change I can understand, but I'm fairly certain that this is an indirect kind of like nerf to the Riven cluster strategy, which by this point it won't really matter. And besides, if they indeed moved the damage that cluster bombs had over to the main projectile, it's probably not going to have too much of a difference. Now finally, Eververse has also seen a change, one that I ultimately hope is for the better of Destiny, but I do have my reserves for it. Now let's just go ahead and take a quick peek at what the Destiny dev team had to say. Now last year we talked about our efforts to give you more control over how you purchase Eververse items. We released the Prismatic Matrix as an experiment to partially address this, but we believe we can do even better. For Season of the Drifter, we wanted to try something new. We will be removing the Prismatic Matrix. Instead, every week there will be unique bundles available that can be directly purchased for silver, allowing you to directly buy the items that you want. All unique bundles will also contain an exclusive vanity item available only through that weekly bundle. If you currently have any prismatic facets, just like last time when they took it away, you're going to be able to use them up until March 5th. After that, they're going to expire into 150 Bright Dust. The Bright Dust storefront will also continue to offer a direct path to acquiring items found within Bright Engrams. Now, this I'm a fan of, in a way. I've always been a supporter of microtransactions as long as they're done correctly. When we're looking at loot boxes and chances to get certain items, that I've never been a fan of. A perfect example of a perfect example of microtransactions done right would be Digital Extreme and Respawn with Titanfall 2. Now, Digital Extremes has done a fantastic job with their microtransaction store. They get the community involved to make unique skins and weapon bundles and a bunch of other stuff. And Respawn did the same thing. If there was a certain color palette that you wanted to buy for your Titan, it cost you $1. Or if you wanted to buy a certain decal bundle set, it was like $3. As long as I know what I'm getting at a fair price, because some of the bundle boxes that exist right now are a little bit too much on the expensive side for me. Like $10 for an emote and a couple of boons seems like a little excessive. That's why personally I never really bought those. The only two items that came in a bundle that I got from the get-go were the Whisper ornaments. Now, we do have a little preview at what we're going to see in the next on the next season's Bright Engrams, and those are going to be displayed down below. We got some really neat emotes, armor, and ornaments, as well as a couple of ships and a really cool looking energy ghost, which I'm excited to get. And if you're still working on getting your titles for your pins, they have extended the program. So the Bungie rewards offer for the premium seal pins has been extended from March 30th, 2019 to August 31st, 2019. And this is largely because a lot of that stuff is reliant on RNG. And it's kind of a bummer because people who want Cursebreaker are, you know, they have to wait to basically get lucky for a ghost ship or sparrow to drop. Luckily, they do address this in the This Week at Bungie. This is what they had to say. Some titles require the completion of destination badges, which are dependent on earning every piece of gear from various destinations or vendors. We have been collecting feedback and are currently working on a chance to drop weights associated with vanity items from the Dreaming City and Last Wish raid. Additionally, we are looking at Braytech weapon schematics and 1000 voices. We will provide additional information closer to the release of these changes. Now, this is fantastic because, again, a lot of people who want to sport that Cursebreaker or Wayfarer or Dredgen really just have to get lucky with either meatball spawns or drops themselves. So I'm glad that they're taking notice of this and they're extending the period to getting the seal badges. But that's going to be it for me today, Guardians. Again, thank you so much for watching. If you did, go ahead and leave a little like down below. If you missed the Bungie ViDoc, again, there's going to be a link in the description down below for the Black Link's breakdown and analyzation of the trailer. Thank you so much for watching and your continued support for Planet Destiny. It seriously means a lot to us, and we'll see you on the next video.